And that's why I'm a huge proponent of it. Because
Yep.
once you have done all of these steps that we're talking about and you sit in a space of gratitude, you can't help but receive.
Mm-hmm.
This or something greater. This
Mm-hmm.
or something greater.
All right, Nick, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I know you and I were just like chit-chatting. I think we chatted for like 20 minutes before we actually hit record, and we're here and we're recording. And so thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I can always talk with you. So I'm not surprised it was 20 minutes before we even began, but I'm glad now that others get to hear our conversations.
Yes, we were just chit-chatting all things. So I know we're going to dive into all kinds of things about money and mindset and manifestation and what that really looks like. But before we do that, will you give a little insight into who you are and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So my background is theater. I'm a Broadway producer, a filmmaker, a creative type, basically, my entire life. And during the last several years, that transitioned into coaching and working with creatives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to manifest, to take projects from just a thought in the mind to full fruition. And in doing so, I come across quite a bit of people's stories, their limiting beliefs, the things that are holding them back, and particularly money stories, because, I think creatives, artist types, entrepreneurs, we're told stories very early on, like the starving artist narrative, all of those. And so we take them on. And so really what I do is help people unblock those stories so they can unearth the real goodness within them and unleash it into the world so that they can share what they have to offer with the world in a way that resonates with people.
That's so awesome. Yeah. And I know I think you and I just like stumbled across each other at one of the next level events. And we were sitting there I think I was eating breakfast and like typing away, and you stumbled up and we started this conversation. And I think it's the first time we'd ever actually met. And then both of us were like, we need to collaborate. Like we need to get on each other's podcast and we can connect. And so I'm so excited to have you here and to be able to dive into that, because I know that there are a bunch of listeners listening who have an idea. They have something that they want to execute, whether or not they describe themselves as creative or not. They have this like vision that they want to create and manifest, right? And I think you and I were even talking about this, like that word manifest is sometimes something people pull away from, or sometimes you're like, yes, I want to manifest. But even in the sense of like, can we take an idea and make it reality? Like, can we make it come into this world? So, and I know you talk all times of storytelling. So I don't even know where I want to start on this, because I know it's just going to be so good.
I'll start with a couple things. One is, if you are a creative, you are an entrepreneur. And if you are an entrepreneur, you are creative. They go hand in hand. It's impossible to be one without being the other. Yeah. And we're all creative. We're born creative. The word creative comes from creation, which is the spark of life. And so therefore, simply by being here, you are creative. And the problem is we're told, and this is going to be part one of what I want to talk about, we're told who we are, and we begin to believe it, and we begin to believe we're not creative. So if that's you and you're like, I'm not a creative, yes, you are. I'm here to tell you you are. And the word manifest, this is the second point I want to make, that really means to bring to the mind's eye. That's the definition of manifest. Now, what it's become and sort of co-opted in sort of a woo, woo, woo kind of way is something else. But what it actually means is to bring to the mind's eye something that already exists. So it's already there. All you're doing is clearing the space so that it can come into full fruition, into your eye, so that you can see it and so that others can see what's already in existence. So I think, where I would like to start is that we're told, like I said, these stories. And one of the stories that we're told is that we're not enough. More often than not, when I work with people, and I'm sure you know this from working with clients as well, is that they're told they're not enough. Like they feel like they're not enough. That's like the number one core issue that we all have. So I want to say before we even begin to talk about manifesting anything, that you are enough. You are natural abundance. Natural abundance. Every single day you take 21,600 breaths. Every single day on average. There are 11,400 different types of grass out there. There's 400,000 different species out there. 72% of the earth is made of water. I'm giving you all these statistics so you can see how important and how important it is to realize that natural abundance exists. But we weren't taught about it, about ourselves. And that's where the problem lies. And we were like, we're taught reading, writing, arithmetic, right? We're in school, but we weren't taught what I call the 4 R's, because the 3 R's are reading, writing, arithmetic, but the 4 R's we weren't taught, which is really how to wrap our mindset and our brain around manifesting in the world. So the first R is exactly what we're talking about, which is review these stories, because we all have so many money stories. We have stories around manifesting because of what we were told. Just like the creative one that I was talking about, you're told these stories and you begin to believe them. I don't know about you, but what were you told as a kid about money?
Well, I came from a split household, so I learned very different stories. I heard very different stories at both households. So at one house, my mom was like a struggling nurse, making ends meet. So we were always budgeting, things were always tight. And then on the flip side, my dad is an entrepreneur, had lots more money than that. And so then I even heard stories of like, oh, Disneyland dad, wouldn't that be nice? Like dad is like this money, he can go do all the fun things. Whereas over here, we're doing the real life hard work stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff there. But I think even we were just talking in the stories of like how my dad, as an entrepreneur, he did work hard for his money. There was a lot of times I was spent in the car as we'd like drive through my dad's, gas station, and we'd sit in the parking lot, my sister and I would be like, no, dad, don't go in. Don't work. Don't go in. You're going to be there. And he's like, it's just 15 minutes. I'm like, it's never 15 minutes. It's always 2 hours. And sure enough. And so I watched that. And so I watched my dad have a lot of freedom around his money and to be able to do vacations and go do things. But it always came with this like attachment all the time and working all the time and hard work, and coming from a line of entrepreneurs. That's what it was, like a bunch of hard work. And then on the same token, my mom was the opposite, like struggling, but yet working really hard. So I think we were just talking about this before, but I think that is a huge one for me, was this essence of like money comes from hard work. And that's what we're here for, is we're here to work hard for our life or whatever. So
and I think that's like very typical, particularly for Americans, for the American audience out there, and fellow Americans. That is something that we are taught, and it's ingrained, and it's almost like this badge of honor, right? I mean, I know for me, the first memory I sort of have of that is that my dad, I said that I wanted a pair of jeans, and my dad was like, "You want those jeans? You got to work for those jeans." You're not going to I'm just not going to buy you these jeans. Right. So I like went and when I realized that he was wrong, basically, because I went and got a job. And in this job, I was a paper boy, because Pat, two blocks over, had a paper route. And he was like, come get a paper route, Nick. And I was like, then, we can go to the arcade, we can buy jeans, we can do all these things that we want to do, because I'd love to play Ms. Pac-Man. So I went and got the paper route, right? I went and applied for the job and I got the paper route. But what they told me was that you could earn money of 2 ways. One, the papers, delivering the papers. And the second was by selling subscriptions. Well, I, got the paper route, and I was like, I would fold the papers and roll the rubber band and stick it in the thing, in the little plastic thing. And, and I had a little red wagon. So you can imagine, and it was hilly. We lived in like this area that was hilly, and I'm like dragging my little red wagon up and down the hills, right? Like, and throwing the papers after I'd already wrapped them and rubber band them and stuck them in the plastic and the whole bit, right? It was hard work. And then I sold my first subscription, and I made more money in that subscription than I did in weeks of tossing the papers. And I remember coming back after selling it and laying down in the grass. I was laying down in the grass. I looked up at the sky, and like the clouds literally parted for me. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my dad is so wrong.
Mm.
You don't have to work hard. You have to
Mhm.
be smart about it. Like you have to like really think about how you're gonna do this, because you know what was easy for me? You know what was really fun for me? Being my charming self, just going door to door and asking people if they wanted to do this subscription. Look, the entrepreneur already, right?
Yeah.
I was like, that was so easy. Packaging all this stuff, doing that. So I immediately got rid of that paper and just started selling subscriptions. And that was the beginning for me of dismantling that belief of hard work. Because the first thing that you have to do in my 4 R's, right, is review. So here we are, we're reviewing these stories right now, right? Mm-hmm. We're reviewing them. And I even as a kid, I kind of already was doing that, right? But if you get really conscious about these stories that you're told, awareness is key. When you have that awareness, suddenly it shifts. It shifts the narrative almost automatically. It changes that story. So really reviewing those stories. And it's complicated because, like you said, you've got 2 parents, you've got society, you've got friends. It's not one thing, right? Yeah. And so stories come up over and over again, and you can constantly do this work, honestly, of the review. Especially as an entrepreneur, your ish comes up. For any of you out there, your stuff comes up. Yeah. Right. And so really being able to like review them honestly is important. And then the second part of it is releasing. The second R is releasing. You got to let go, you know. Also give yourself credit. Give yourself credit for what you have done. Yeah. Right. Even in that first phase. The second is releasing and letting go of these stories. You got to forgive yourself, because we've all made mistakes. We've all made financial mistakes. And I think, you know, a lot of clients will come to me like they can't like let go of what they've done in the past. I've made a ton of mistakes. Okay. So I got to tell you the story because it's like so ridiculous. I was, you know, when I was an actor, you know, I was so like scarcity mindset. I was so afraid all the time of not having a job that I took any job that was handed towards me. Right. So I'm doing a show I'm not going to name the theater. It's gone now. But it was out of New York City. It was a couple of hours north of the city. And you had to take Metro North train to get there. And they didn't pay for our train ticket. Even though it was to get to the work, they didn't pay for it, right? And they paid us $199 a week to do 8 shows a week plus travel up there.
And you were going back and forth each day or each? Okay.
Okay. And I had to pay for my train ticket each day. And I realized that I came to to Grand Central and I put my card down to get my train ticket to go to work, and it was declined. And I was like, oh gosh, my card just got declined. Pulled out my ATM card back in the day, you know how we used our ATMs more. Yeah. Put my ATM in. I couldn't get any money out. And I remember sitting down on the stairs at Grand Central, those big old stairs, and I started to bawl. I started to cry because I realized the mistake I had made was I didn't value myself enough to take a job that would pay me enough to even get to work.
Yeah, because how much was the train ticket?
More than what I was being paid for the week. Let alone my rent, which is not cheap in New York City, let alone, you know, food, clothing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And the time you could have been spent building something or doing something else that actually paid you.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I needed that lesson. And I had to almost forgive myself and let go of that. Even in that moment, I had to let go. Now, that doesn't mean repeat the pattern, right? But we do need to release the story that you've been told or taught. That story that I taught that I wasn't enough was super, I mean, prevalent. That was a big part of that story. To say, oh, I'll take whatever I can get. I'll take what I can get, right? Letting go, that was the bottom for me, right? Sometimes we have to hit a bottom. That was my bottom in terms of my finances so that I could let go of that story. Yeah. And then part 3 of that, then, if those are the first 2, the third one is renew. That's like creating a new story. What's the new story that you, or the new belief that you want to have? Are you in a fixed money mindset, or are you in a growth money or manifestation mindset? We get to choose. We get to choose. I think often about, scarcity versus, we talk a lot about this, right? I know you do as well. Like having a scarcity mindset versus like an abundance mindset. And what does that mean? And oftentimes we think of, well, there's a finite pie, right? There's a pie. My grandmother, God bless her, made amazing pie, but there were 27 grandchildren, 27 of us. My mother had 7 brothers and sisters, right? And as kids, we would race for the pie. And I always thought that was so interesting. Even then, I could see it, right? That we'd all race for the pie thinking they're not going to get a piece of pie. I want a piece of pie. I want a piece of that pie. But the interesting thing was my grandmother always knew that there were 27 of us. So she always came out and there was yet another pie. And I think of that a lot when I'm thinking about, a finite amount. There is not a finite amount. There's abundance in the universe, which we already said, 21,600 breaths a day, all the species, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think they're going, well, I don't know if I should grow because there's already some trees out there. There's flowers out there, right? Like, no. And yet we think that we can't create something or get something or do something because somebody else is already doing it, right?
Well, and that, I mean, like similar story to your pie eating is like, I see it with my kids all the time where they're like, I want that. It's mine. And like, give me some. And I'm of the ilk of like, let's teach them about this, like abundance manifestation. Where it's like, if you're fighting over these last 2 pieces, yeah, that's all you're going to get. But if you're openly sharing with each other and you're like, it's okay, you have more, then chances are I'm actually going to buy you more versus when you're fighting over it, I'm not going to buy it again. Like this element of, even as a parent, we're kind of reinforcing those manifestation type principles in the sense of like, it drives me nuts when you guys are fighting over this 1 cup of ice cream. And now like one person won't let the other person share versus reinforcing that idea of like, you share, I'll buy you another carton of ice cream anyway. So
yeah. And that is very, very true.
Yeah.
That is sort of how the universe works ultimately. If you think that, oh, well, I'm not sure I can trust that, try it. I had a real estate broker when I lived in New York. I bought an apartment. And my broker said to me, you need to stretch beyond what you think is possible. And I was like, oh, I can't afford. Listen to that. Anytime you hear that, that's like key, right? I was like, oh, I don't know if I can afford that. And he said, you know what? I have belief that you'll rise to the level in which is needed.
Wow.
Whoa, was that scary? And here it was, my real estate broker is like coaching me, right? I'm a coach and the real estate broker is coaching me, right? But he was right. I rose to the occasion. Now I want to make it very clear that like not everyone starts at the same place. I think that's very, very important. We all have different privileges. We have different responsibilities, but we do all have the capacity to rise a little, like we're saying, like you're teaching your kids, right? To trust and know what's possible for you, which really goes into number 4, which is receive. That's the true ability of manifestation, is actually receptivity. We think of manifesting as something out there, like it's way out somewhere. I'm going to wish it and it's going to come true somehow, some magical way, boom. But really, it's about getting clear and being aligned and offering value into the world.
Yeah.
But then through that value that you offer, being open to receiving, to being reciprocal. Because all money is an energy exchange. We're exchanging energy, value for value. But if you're not able to receive, like you're saying, with what you're teaching your kids, if you're not able to receive, it's not going to matter.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that idea of receiving is something that is I know that was something I really had to learn, the sense of being open and willing to receive, because I think culturally and society too, I had always been taught that it's better to give than it is to receive, and to be this very giving person, and that the giving was the ultimate thing. And so there was this element of like, almost that supersedes the receiving. And so there was a lot that I had to unpack, particularly in that. And even coming down to, I know I've shared this on podcasts before, but like even receiving compliments, and not just money, but how hard it is for so many women and men probably too. But like I work with a lot of women to receive compliments, to receive money. And it's something that I've noticed a significant amount of growth in me over the last even years, like somebody buying me a cup of coffee, or somebody, like whatever, as simple and stupid as it sounds. Like I used to be that person, be like, no, don't worry about it. I can give you $5. Like, you don't need to buy my coffee. I got my coffee. It's okay. Like, and it was this whole big thing. Cause and it probably comes down to like the sense of feeling guilty for receiving, because it's been touted as giving is better. And then there was somewhere in the past 7 years, that this idea of like, in order for somebody else to give, somebody has to be willing to receive. And so it became almost this feeling of like, in order for that person to experience the joy and the gift of giving, why can't I be the person willing to receive it for them? And that is almost just as much of a gift to that person is vice versa, right? So like, then it became this whole thing of like exploring that receiving is just as valuable, if not more, and like the giving. And like, anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But how I see that now in myself and the growth that I've had, but I see it in other people too. And I think that is a big area.
Well, and the first thing you did was you noticed it, right? That's that first phase that I was talking about, reviewing that story. You saw that story, that old story that you've been taught forever and ever and ever, that it's better to give than to receive. Like, how many times have we heard that, right? But you realized, oh, that's a story. And then you were like, I got to let go, the release. You were like, what's the new story I want to believe, the renew? And then you were able to actually receive. And in that, my friend Tom really shifted this for me. And I used to be a giver to the point of over giving, to be perfectly honest, and not able to receive anything. And he said he was giving me a gift. And I was like, oh, I can't take that. I can't take that. I can't take that. And he said, you know what? You're really hurting my feelings. He said, you not being able to receive is not honoring me and our friendship and our relationship. And you're actually hurting me. Wow. That was like okay.
Yeah.
And then I started to look at my overgiving period. Particularly as entrepreneurs, we can do this. We can overgive when it's actually stealing from somebody. Overgiving is stealing from somebody else. And when I realized that too, that was like, oh, okay. Huh. Now, learning the law of reciprocity is not easy. Let's be honest. Yeah. It's not a simple thing. But the biggest form truly of receptivity is gratitude. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of it. Because once you have done all of these steps that we're talking about and you sit in a space of gratitude, you can't help but receive this or something greater, this or something greater.
And I think that that's where, a lot of people undervalue the power of gratitude and the sense of what gratitude can really do for you, and like holding in that space. And, I had heard years ago the story of like a couple that were on the brink of splitting, and like I think it was maybe even as a folklore sort of story, but like the husband decided to keep a journal of everything he was thankful for of his spouse. And he wasn't even telling her, he was just keeping his own journal, like every day writing down something. And they talked about that, like after that 1 year of him committing to do that, like their marriage completely changed. And you think of like the essence of like when you in that state of mind, like how easy it is as spouses and entrepreneurs to find out all the flaws and the things that we don't like, right? He didn't take out the trash. He didn't, this or that. And then we start perpetuating and focusing on those. But then when we shift into that place of gratitude, we start finding all the things that are working and are the things they are doing well, and how it really is about bringing our attention to those things. And I was even thinking recently about like this quote unquote lack of financial abundance, right? Because my finances are not where I want them to be. However, just this last week, I put in new turf in our backyard. So we have like this new green grass and we have our swimming pool. And I was like out there and I was like, oh my goodness, look at what I've been able to create.
Yeah.
Yes, I may have a $60,000 loan for my swimming pool right now, but at the same time, look at this. This is like beautiful and wonderful. And this makes me feel so good being out here. And this space makes me feel abundant, and it makes me feel grateful, and it makes me feel this joy, right? And how that's the essence of like creating that abundance long-term.
Yeah. Because what you just described is, and the 4 R's are the tool to get you to this state of being.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is where the law of attraction comes in. Oftentimes we just start with the law of attraction, right? And we say, oh, be it so you can get it, right? But you can't be in that state of gratitude, in that state of being, in that until you've done the work to clear yourself so that you're ready to be there. Mm-hmm. So yes, that year of gratitude brought him to that state so that he could save his marriage.
Yeah.
Right. By review, what was he doing? He was reviewing his stories. He was releasing, he was letting go. He was sitting in a place of gratitude for what was really important versus what wasn't.
Right.
And that's that vibration. When they talk about like, high vibes, be in the high vibes, what they're really saying is let go of the small stuff that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Be in gratitude for what is important, what doesn't matter, because that attracts people to you. Yeah. There are really like 3 ways in which we most manifest, and it is through our stories we share, because we connect with people, through the relationships you build. We're here right now. Mm-hmm. We manifested this together, right? Through the relationships that you build, and through the skills, through what you have to offer the world. That's how you really manifest. Mm-hmm. You were able to pay for that pool, not only from a loan, but you were able to get the loan because of what you've brought into the world and the relationships that you have, the relationship you have with the bank, et cetera. And by being who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Nick, this was so good. And we could, like you said, we could probably just keep on talking and keep on going forever. And that's why I love the podcast. I love bringing these conversations on because I just love learning from you and other people that come on the podcast and just being able to share and having these like real conversations, because this is really the work. There's so much that we do in business that's all like the plug and play and the systems and the processes and the things. But and I say this over and over again, if I decided one day I don't want to do my business anymore and I just went back to working a 9-to-5, I would never be the same person. Like who I am and how I show up in a 9-to-5 job would be a completely different person. And even to that, like the level of opportunity, the level of success, like all of that would happen in a 9-to-5, if that were the road that I ever went down, would be completely different because of the tools, the skills, the mindset, the training, like everything that I've done. So it's not like what this part of business is not just for your business. It's like it impacts your business. It impacts the way you show up for your family. It impacts the way you show up in 9-to-5. Like it literally impacts who you are in your very being. And I think that that's so powerful.
It is. And I want to say, even this 4R thing that I just, we just sort of went through with money, you can do that with all of the quadrants of your life, with love, with relationships, with business, you can really go through this same process with all of them, with what you're intending to manifest. Know your why, get clear, and that can happen. And like you said, it's going to take over all different aspects of your life in such a beautiful way that you're never going to be the same, no matter if you stay as an entrepreneur, go back to a 9-to-5, or choose another path.
Yeah.
Like it's holistic.
Yeah.
And the work that you do with people consequently is going to help them in all aspects of their life, not just their business. And I really appreciate what you do in the world. Just want to say that to you.
You too. Both go right back at you. Do you feel like, Nick, there's anything that we missed that you want to make sure that we highlight before we wrap up, or you feel like we get it?
I feel like we got it.
Okay.
We got it.
We're good.
We're good to go. What do you mean? Huh? We're good. We got it all.
We covered all of the world in one little podcast. I'm kidding. Where can people find you and follow you and connect with you and learn more about what you have going on so they can dive in?
At thenickdemas.com is the website, and on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, at the Nick Demas.
Perfect. And we will make sure to have all that linked up in the show notes for you so that you guys can go grab that quick and easy. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.